The starter trick, back up 1 body length. The objective is for the dog to walk back fluently in front of you and facing you. We will explore some of the many methods of teaching this trick. The first one we'll look at is using a hind foot target. The prerequisite is that the dog understands and has value for standing with 4 feet on the platform. First, reinforce for being on the platform, then lure or hand target to bring his front feet forward off the platform. Then you can make a slight movement towards the dog and mark the instant he moves backwards. Then reward on the platform again. Reward on the platform, draw him forward. The moment he moves back, you mark, and then reward again on the platform. Then you can progressively take him further forward so that his back feet come off the platform. You mark the instant his back feet then hit the platform as he moves backward. Then you can replace the platform with a mat or a flatter hind foot target. Progressively build distance that the dog moves forwards and then backwards to the hind foot target. Progressively increase the distance that you take the dog off the mat and again mark as he returns to that foot target. Introduce your verbal cue when the dog is giving a consistent, correct response. Sometimes using a hind foot target can lead to the dog reaching for the mat with an exaggerated lifting of the hind leg. Using a flatter hind foot target can help prevent or overcome that problem. An alternative method starts with placing a treat under your chair. For equipment, you'll need a chair without rungs, which could interfere with the dog's movement, and a mat for hind foot targeting. Your dog should understand, mark and reward, and be confident and not concerned about moving into the confined space under the chair. Sit in the chair with the dog facing you, then place the treat just under the front of the chair and cue him to get it. Then mark the instant he starts to move backwards to look at you again, and then reward in front. Then place another treat under the front of the chair. Gradually increase the distance the treat is placed under the chair so he has to back up further. Always mark for backwards movement. Then progressively move the target mat backwards, again to increase the distance of the walk back. Only introduce your verbal cue when the dog is consistently giving you a correct response. The third method involves moving into the dog's space. Your dog should understand mark and reward, and it's important that he is confident and not intimidated by you moving into his space. With a treat on the dog's nose, take your hand backwards and slightly lower into his chest. Mark the instant the dog moves backward. With a small dog, extending your arm is sufficient to start with. Then you can progressively increase the extent of movement. Lure for just a few repetitions and then move to targeting. Again, only introduce a verbal cue once the dog is giving a consistent, correct response. Using food in two hands can steer the dog's backward movement. The angle of your hand and wrist can influence the direction of the dog's movement. Method 4 involves using a channel. This helps the dog to build muscle memory for moving straight backwards. You can use household furniture to create a simple channel. You move towards the dog and mark while the dog is still moving. You can then eliminate your movement towards the dog. Give your verbal cue, mark the initial backwards movement of the dog, and reward in front to set up for another repetition.
Reverse. Yes. Reverse. Yes. Reverse. Yes.
Another convenient channel could be in your garage, between the car and the wall.
Reverse. Yes. Stand. Reverse. Yes.
An exercise pen or low fencing can provide a simple channel which is less imposing and therefore easier to fade than a channel with very large or high sides. The pointy end is helpful since the dog is likely to be keen to step backwards into the wider space of the channel. Reward at the pointy end, then wait for her to choose to walk backwards. Always mark while the backwards movement is happening. A similar method is to use poles, elevated or even on the ground, to guide the dog and develop understanding and muscle memory. Bring the dog forward to make sure he's comfortable in that space. If the dog already understands, you can give the cue and have him reverse to the mat, then bring him forward again for the reward in order to reset and restart. You can also find features around your home or in the environment to provide a barrier for your dog. Here we have a step up on the right and a step down on the dog's left, and each provides a barrier and a frame within which the dog can move. Another approach is to walk into the dog's space without any barrier in place. Now pulling together all the key elements of the trick. For the setup, the dog will be in a stand in front of and facing you, and there'll be a space of at least 50 centimetres between you and your dog. You will then cue your dog to back up or walk back, and he will walk back at least one body length. The judge will indicate when the dog has moved back the required distance. The trick ends at that point. Here are some examples of the starter trick, back up one body length. Once again, dogs have different natural styles of walking backwards.